Hello and welcome to the Delco Real Agent, aka Living in the Brandywine Valley. I'm your host, Shannon.diiorio, and today I'm talking about how buyers in the states of Pennsylvania and Delaware can take title to real property, to real estate. And what that means is just the way that you can legally take title to property. There's a couple of different options that come with different rights and responsibilities, and it's important for buyers to understand their options and to be able to make a decision long before closing day because it's something they might want to give some thought to. So I want to preface by saying that I'm not a lawyer, so I can't give legal advice, and I'm not a title agent, but I am a real estate broker licensed in both Pennsylvania and Delaware, and I've been in the business for over 20 years and have taken numerous classes on the subject. So, and Pennsylvania and Delaware are not unique. It's these ways that you can own property and take legal ownership are similar across the board, but different states might have different little nuances. So I'm only speaking of Pennsylvania and Delaware. If you're purchasing a home with two or more people, let's say purchasing the home, but you're not married. So I actually work with a lot of first-time home buyers that may purchase a home prior to getting married, or maybe they're never planning on getting married. But either way, they've got some options as to how they can take title. So they can take title as tenants in common or as joint tenants with the right of survivorship. So the difference between those two options, one would be tenants in common. So that means that each person going on the deed, they would be splitting the property in some fashion. So let's say it's two people and maybe they want to split it 50-50. Maybe they want to split it 60-40. And if something happens to one party or the other, they pass away, something happens, their portion of the property gets passed on to their heirs. So they would have to have a will in place specifying what happens to their portion of the property. So there's a chance that property may have to be sold at that point. Versus taking ownership as joint tenants with the right of survivorship. That means if something happens to one of the parties, the property now becomes the other party's property. They own it in full. So they would have the right to own that property for the rest of their life, and then that property would ultimately get passed to their heirs. So with, I would say, most first-time home buyers, and I'm not saying that this is my recommendation because everyone's different and you need to make your own decisions, right, as to how you do this. But most buyers do go into it as joint tenancy with the right of survivorship. But where I have heard of and seen people take title as tenants in common could be for many different reasons, but I've definitely seen it where maybe it's a second marriage for both of them. And they want to so it could be that they're married or unmarried, but they want to take title that way because maybe they both have children from previous marriages and they want to make sure that their portion of that property would be inherited by their own children, right? So that would be just one of many possible reasons to take title that way versus having the right of survivorship. So when we're talking about married couples, they actually have another option, which would be tenants by the entirety, which also comes with that right of survivorship. So you have a married couple, they purchase the property together as tenants by the entirety. Something happens to one of them, the property is now fully owned by the other. But the additional benefit to this option is that each party owns the property in its entirety. So what does that mean? It's hard to even imagine that each one owns 100% of the property. So what that means is if something happens and one of them gets sued and has some type of financial lien against them, it would be very difficult to have that lien placed on the property because that property is also owned 100% by the other party. Now again, I'm not a lawyer, but that is generally how it works. So it's just an added protection. Now, if the suit is against both parties, well then all bets are off. They can put that lien on the property. So that is one benefit that in Pennsylvania and Delaware, only married couples have that option. So I do, like I mentioned, work with a lot of first-time home buyers, and some of them purchase a house before they get married, but they do plan on getting married in the future. So they don't have that option as purchasing as tenants by the entirety at the time they buy the house. They can do joint tenants with the right of survivorship. And then I just recommend that once they get married, if they want to have that added benefit or added protection, they can just go to an attorney and have the deed changed. There's a fee associated with that, of course, a fee for the service and for re-recording the deed, but it might be worth it just to have that added legal protection. I never recommend to buyers that they wait until they get married to buy a house, because that small fee would very rarely outweigh the benefits of homeownership. If they're ready to purchase a house now, go for it. You can always change the deed later. And then of course there's buying a house as a sole owner. There's only one way. Well, I shouldn't say there's one way to do that, because you can buy a house as an LLC, you can put a house in a trust. There's all different ways that you can do that, but those would be another conversation, another day, another video. But just buying your primary residence as an individual, you don't really have as many options as to how you legally hold title with that. So again, you've got two options if there's more than one party going into it. One of them carries the right of survivorship, one of them doesn't, and the portion of their property would go to their heirs, and they need to make sure they have a will in place for that. And then the tenants by the entirety is an added benefit for married couples only. So if you are someone who purchased a house as a couple and then got married later, that might be something that you want to look into. I love working with first-time home buyers, and I'm always happy to explain how these options work. And I try to do that early in the process, right up front, so that they have plenty of time to think it over, rather than waiting until the day of closing and the title agent walks in the room and springs it on them. Hey guys, how do you want to take title? And they're like, what are you talking about? And we have to decide like right this minute and have zero time to think about this. So I think it's really important for buyers to understand this going into the process, what their options are, what are the legal benefits, what are the pros and cons, right? So, and then they've got time to make a decision. I'm always happy to take on new first-time home buyers or repeat experienced buyers and sellers. You can reach me at all of my contact information below. And I do specialize in both Delaware County and Chester counties in Pennsylvania, and then also Newcastle County in Delaware.